Holy, definitely not confirmed and unannounced roster rumors. This is Flight Check Season 2, Episode 36. We are back one more time, talking all aspects of FlyQuest with a LCS roster on the brink of announcement, an Academy roster here any minute now, and an amateur roster to be announced. There's all kinds of excitement going on within the FlyQuest community. My name, as always, is Sandy Toes. To my left and my extra left are my fellow hosts, Noxwar and Curly Double Q. Fellas, a bit of a slower week on the news side. We were talking in our group chat a little bit ago. Looks like I would presume some of the hang-ups around roster announcements are because any players that have lawyers took the weekend off for Thanksgiving. Imagine, now, if you will, imagine with me, starting the free agency period in North America 3 days before one of the most quintessential American holidays, besides Christmas, and then expecting people to not take those days off. Might have been a bad move. But, all that aside, feels like things are starting to wrap up. Lots of rumors and leaks are out there. You can basically know the entire LCS and LEC rosters as a whole. Nox, is there anything that's left that you are particularly looking forward to finding out right now?
The FlyQuest amateur team, of course.
I knew that's where you were going. I knew that's what was coming up next.
So I'm truly looking forward to, because everything else we pretty much got a general idea of, or there's very, very solid rumors for like the last remaining spots, right? Like one of those being like Team Liquid's jungler. We have a very strong inkling it's going to be Umti, but It's not been confirmed by anyone. So For me personally, FlyQuest amateur.
Yeah. Curly, how about you? Anything that's still sitting out there that you are interested in finding out?
I mean, I just want confirmation of of the FlyQuest rosters, and I would also like to know the FlyAm roster, because I'm waiting to make content, dude. And if we do some research and then it turns out we did it on the wrong player, it's gonna be awkward.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Nox if that's the case, because he's been doing most of it.
Well, I mean, look, we all know that as soon as the show is over, FlyQuest will begin to announce the roster. So actually, that's all we have time for tonight, guys. It's been a great show. Thanks for everyone coming out. But I am going to go to the closing scene, and let's see if they buy it. Don't say anything, guys. All right, hang on. Any tweets?
I am reading in our chat that supposedly Sharks is confirming everything that's been rumored, and Papa Smithy is firing him on the spot.
Oh, interesting. I'm checking Twitter right now.
So if there are any head coaches looking for team, FlyQuest is looking.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, well, okay. I mean, we can't not go the next hour without actually doing a show, and we'll assume FlyQuest will do the announcements sometime later tonight. Or tomorrow morning, of course. All right, so if you haven't been keeping up with the recent news, currently this is where things stand. No announcements yet, of course, but several of these players have been given the customary thank you fill in the blank for their time at their orgs. But right now the rumored FlyQuest roster stands at Impact Spica from EG and TSM respectively, and then Vikla from KT Rolster in the LCK. Prince, who... Was he on Sandbox? Is that where he was coming from?
Yeah, LSB.
Yeah, LSB Live Sandbox. And then finally Ayla, who has been on Team Liquid Academy for some time now. Now, since we talked to you guys last week, really the only change to those rumors is Prince. I believe last week when we talked, the big rumor was Docdom or Ruler. No longer, or even Teddy, no longer the case. It looks like those players have probably signed with other LCK teams, and it does look like Prince is going to be the guy in the bot lane along with Ayla. Now, this isn't really like a leak. I mean, this is public information. You can go find this out. it does look like Prince has kind of jumped the gun a little bit, possibly, because there is a Twitter account out there that is basically Fly Prince, where he, kind of outs himself as the new FlyQuest 80 carry. Knox, I think you saw this earlier, and I think you might have even shown this to us. How confident are you in how real this account might be, if this is actually Prince's Twitter account, if this is basically a confirmation that he will be on FlyQuest next spring?
Like 95% confident. I'm leaving 5% in the case that all of like FlyQuest staff and a couple of other people in the LCS are the biggest trolls ever and are purposely following this account to like throw people off. But like for instance, Ayla is following this account, Richard is following this account, UG is following this account, and part of what really like confirmed it for me was I was actively looking at people I follow who's now following this account, and I remember checking it when I first woke up, and I was like, okay, I saw UG and Ayla, and then I checked back 2 minutes later, and I saw that in that 2 minute time span, Richard had started following. So I was like, interesting, okay. So I'm like 95% confident that is going to be Prince's FlyQuest Twitter account. But yeah, on the off chance that everyone in the LCS is giant trolls, which I'm not ruling out, I'm going to leave there 5% chance that it's not him.
I'm also not ruling out
It could be
the possibility
it could
that
be.
the entire team, that like somebody on the team was like, hey guys, watch this. I'm going to create...
It's Parker. It's I'm calling it right now. It is Parker if that's the case.
I'm going to create the bait to end all baits and create a FlyQuest Prince Twitter account, tell everybody in the org to follow it, and then boom, that's where it all gets confirmed, right? But
yeah, for those interested in following, the @ is FlyPrince0405 because there are a lot of other Fly Princes out there.
I mean, that makes sense.
I'll link it in the Twitch chat here in a second.
So there is that. Now, if we're gonna get into kind of breaking down this roster now that it seems a little bit more solidified, I do want to talk about Prince a little bit because he was not someone that we talked about last week. So Curly, I want to talk to you first. Prince, Live Sandbox. Live Sandbox did look good. I think they were actually going into the regional tournament before getting upset by DRX. They were basically everyone's favorite to be the fourth LCK seed. And interestingly enough, I would even say that Live Sandbox was one of those like catalyst teams in the LCK this summer to get, because they played in such an aggressive variant style within the LCK that they kind of forced the other teams to adapt to how they were playing, and I believe made those teams have to think bigger than the meta was already, causing them to do. In like, if you want an analogy to an LCS team, I would say that they were kind of like CLG was last year, in the summer at least, where CLG was doing things differently, caused teams to think about how they were playing the game a little bit differently. So now we're getting, most likely, their AD carry. How are you feeling about this? What are your reactions to this news?
So much like I think it was with Teddy that I hadn't heard about, Prince is another ADC I hadn't heard about, so I did some looking around, and I'm seeing Live Sandbox consistently this year, third place finishes across summer playoffs, and the regional finals. So they definitely powered up in the summer. I don't know. It does look like there was a bit of a roster change that led to that. Not positive. But so just from the get-go, being able to secure an ADC that's like consistently top 3, like on a top 3 team in the LCK, I think that's a great way to start. And then looking at his match history, it does seem like when he is a big part of their wins. He has high KDAs, high CS, in all of their wins. One thing I am nervous about is it does seem that in some of the losses, he really gets punished a lot. So that could just be a classic ADC moment where you're either the literal carry and the reason you're winning, or you don't get to play the game. So I don't know if that has much to do with him as an individual player. But I'm looking at his champ pool. He seemed to really enjoy Lucian, Zeri, Aphelios. He even played some Nyla. So it's looking like he knows he can play some good meta champions. And I see he even pulls out the Sivir and Kalista. So it's good to see that he has variety in his champ pool, because if you have flexibility in draft, I think that's something that can make you really good in any league, no matter what. Because if you're like, all right, they're gonna play this part of the meta, I can outsmart them. So seeing that he has a diverse champ pool and he knows how to pilot all of them definitely instills confidence. So the eye test, I like it. Good call.
Yeah. I think a lot of people really like this move based on the eye test alone. Nox, how are you feeling about it? Not the same name branding maybe as Docdom or Ruler, but that doesn't necessarily mean severely less quality. How are you feeling about it?
It's funny. I was actually kind of joking with someone else earlier. I was like, we have all these Korean players coming in, and out of the three of us, like, Sandy, you're probably the expert on the LCK here. You know far more about these players than, like, I think me or Curly does. So from what I've gathered from you, as well as other people that I've talked to, Prince is a very, very good AD carry. Just great stats in general. I will be doing a lot of research coming up soon for him, and so I'll probably give you a much better idea next week. But for the time being, I'm kind of going off of what everyone else has said, and everything I've heard is just good, right? And so that gives me very good feelings about if he is coming in, and I think he should theoretically, off of what I've heard, be able to slot in very, very well. So yeah, I'm just excited about Prince in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also excited about him. He has been, he was around the scene. For those who don't know, he was around kind of the LCK Challenger scene for a while. He subbed on both BBQ Olivers and Damwon. Back on, he was on Damwon as a sub bot laner during their 2019 season. And then he was on Spear Gaming / Awesome Spear for a while, which I believe was an LCK Challengers team. Spent like a month and a half on Fun Plus Phoenix as a bot lane sub. And then he has spent the last 2 seasons on Live Sandbox as their main AD carry. 22 years old. And I think generally, folks would say that this is a player that we should be excited about. This is not some washed up Korean player coming over for a paycheck.
Well, he's very young, right?
He's very young. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity here for him to make a real impact on this team. Like, I expect him to be top 3 in the league, just kind of automatically. That's kind of my minimum expectations for him, just based off of how I've seen him play in the LCK previously, and just knowing what the AD carry pool is like here in North America. So I'm particularly excited about what he can do and what he's going to bring to the team. At this point, I just want the roster to get announced so that we can really start bringing down. And honestly, I just want the LCS to be back so that we can watch this team in action. That is what I want and desire.
That's where I'm at.
Out of everything, give me the LCS lock-in tournament next week. I'm ready. Bring it on.
I need competitive League of Legends, bro. I just need
yeah.
Worlds ended, and I was like, all right, breather, and now I'm like, all right, well, I'm at the end of Pokemon. Can we have something, please?
Are either of you guys worried at all about visa issues? This is historically an issue that NA has had to deal with every year. Always seems like there's some players who can't get into the States in time for lock-in tournament or for spring. They have to start way behind everybody else. How, especially because, and I've been thinking about this, especially because these are 5 players all coming from different teams, bringing them together as early as possible seems very important to me. So are you guys worried at all about the visa process? Obviously, we haven't heard anything. We probably won't hear anything until much closer to lock-in. That's usually when visa issue rumors start percolating. But are you guys at all concerned about any potential visa issues messing with this team building up synergy at the start of the season?
For me particularly, I'm not as worried because it seemed like when we were bringing in Takui last year, we were really on top of things, and I think even with Yuji as well, for Academy. So I don't think we heard anything about FlyQuest having any visa issues. We were able to play with the team from the get-go. So yeah, I think however we end up handling things, maybe it was just things going smoother last year in contract, so we were able to get that ball rolling quicker. But I think we're really on top of getting players here and getting their visa stuff situated.
Yeah, even going further back to 2021, the only visa issue we had was Jose Dioto, and basically I think we missed like the first 2 days of the lock-in group stage tournament, and he was still there on the 3rd group stage day, and basically 2-0'd when he came in. So, yeah, I think even if there are visa issues, it's not going to be so bad to the point of where they're missing the entirety of lock-in. Like, it would be like a day or 2 at most. So I'm not too worried about it. And I think the other thing is with Papa Smithy now being on this org, like his connection, not that it makes visas go any faster, right? But like he can help get the processes going quicker and he can make the process easier, right? And so I'm not too worried about any hangups.
He's going to walk into the American embassy in Korea and just stare them down until they say yes.
Yeah.
You will let my players in.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, they get the process going as soon as possible. I mean, I'm just always worried about, it's the holiday season. It's always a difficult process, so hopefully there won't be any delays. Something I do want to talk about as we look at this roster as a whole. Already, there's a lot of talk placing this roster just on paper alone, top 2, top 3. I'm seeing a lot more top 2s. LS gave us his old curse by power ranking us number 1.
We're doomed. Honestly,
at this point, that just signifies a historic collapse, and I can't really put any stock in anything anymore. Are you guys feeling as excited and as optimistic as everyone else seems to be? Are you also in this top 2 range? Because I was still saying it's top 4. I wasn't jumping all the way to top 2. I feel like it's certainly possible to get there, but maybe it's just me being jaded and cynical. I am not automatically jumping to top 2 optimism. I'm just settling for a top 4 and let's fight for a place at Worlds. That's kind of where I'm at right now. How about you guys?
I'm in a similar boat as you because I will always reference how I grew up near the Buffalo Bills, and I'm like, now my team is the Browns. Every time someone says this year is our year, everything goes down.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if it's looking like this year should be our year, so I don't want to say that at all, and I want as few people to say it as all, because like that's just gonna manifest some collapse. I'm like, please don't do the sports curse. No one get any tattoos the day before championships, please, none of that, But like, admittedly though, getting past that, I am actually excited for it. I just really want to see how the team plays, so I have like more of a context of like, all right, how hype am I justifiably going to be? Because like, I will hype up every team we put on the Rift.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if we're 8th place. Doesn't matter if we're 3rd place. Doesn't matter for first. I will hype everyone the best I can. But it's like, all right, how much flack am I going to get from everyone else on Twitter for hyping them up, you know? It's like, is there good performance to back it up? And I think there will be, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm going to get over the cautious optimism. I think there will be. This looks like a very solid roster, even in the wake of the fact that it's an overhaul, which always does affect like culture a bit. I think it's going to be good. I think I'm not going to shoot and say that top 1, top 2 until I see how we play. But like Worlds it's in our sights. Even before we, play the lock-in tournament. That's how I feel.
Yeah. All right, Knox, you were grinning there a moment ago. So how are you feeling about these predictions and power rankings?
I feel like typically, not all the time, but I feel like a majority of the time, I'm usually the pessimist on this show. I'm usually the one trying to no, set the expectations low.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of the opposite right now, man. I'm kind of full on board. On paper, this roster should be a top 2 roster. Okay, I'm not saying we will win because that's getting a little too cocky. But this on paper should be a top 2 roster. This should be a very, very good roster. Teams should be striving to be what we are in this coming year. I've got the hype. I've got the hopium. It's flowing through me, boys. I'm ready for 2023 to start because I have nothing but good feelings.
Yeah. The roles have reversed.
Did you take my personality?
I was going to say, the roles have reversed here. Curly now the pessimist and Knox the optimist.
I didn't say I'm a pessimist. I'm just
cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously
I've thrown caution to the wind, baby. I'm in it. It's a top 2 finish. I'm in it. I'm sold.
For Knox, maybe you could expand on that a little. Is it because just on paper we know the caliber of these players and we assume that they'll be able to, and if they are able to synergize together and everything works out, it should be a top 2 roster? Or is there another reason? Because another reason possibly that someone could say, are the other rosters in NA just not that good?
Rosters that will be good in summer, in which case that is probably what I'm more worried about is come summertime. Rosters like TL. I think TL's not going to be good in spring, but I think if you give that team time to gel come summer, that can be a very scary team. Cloud9's going to be running it back basically outside of one player. That team will be scary throughout, and I think will probably be one of our most replayed matchups come playoffs.
Yeah.
EG, I think, is still looking very strong, but everyone else is kind of you're rebuilding or you're having to synergize. And while we're going to have to synergize too, I think the caliber of players that we brought in this offseason just outweighs what everyone else brought in. And so we already have the head start. We already know what needs to get done, which means we have more time to focus on what needs to be done. And so by the time playoffs rolls around, we should be ahead of those other teams. So my only real worry is going to end up being Cloud9 and maybe EG at this current point in time.
EG actually is the biggest. I'm scared of EG.
I was gonna say I'm just gonna kind of run through things. I mean, I'm already discounting TSM, GG, Immortals. Dignitas is interesting, but I don't think they'll be more than a top 6 team. They'll make playoffs, but I don't think they'll do much. CLG made no moves, and it's arguable that we upgraded in literally every single role, and we were kind of on par-ish with CLG, so I feel like we've leapfrogged past them. My hot take is that 100 Thieves is not going to be very good. They're going to be kind of mid, in my opinion. I do think C9, EG, TL, and FlyQuest are going to be your top 4 teams come spring and summer. I just don't think that the other 6 teams or the other 5 teams in the league are going to be able to really do that. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. I think EG is still pretty good. I think they did side grades at worst. C9 is interesting. I'll be interested to see especially how Sven, if he improves in his support pool especially. TL is going to be an interesting experiment, with the full Korean speaking roster. You know, it might take some time for that to gel, like you said, Knox, but we'll see how it goes. But like on paper, I think this is absolutely a top 3, top 4 roster that FlyQuest has put together, and I'm really excited about next year. So that is kind of where things are on the main team. However, we've got a whole another team that did get not announced, but leaked, reported on, and that is FlyQuest Academy. It's Nox's time to shine.
So, yeah, it's so funny. I keep wanting to say Academy team.
This is a report. FlyQuest Academy report, and we're looking at Philip being brought back down to Academy, which is understandable if you're bringing in Impact. I mean, that kind of tracks. Retaining Yuji and Spirax, which I think everybody on this show is very happy about.
Everybody liked that.
Yes, everybody likes that. That was absolutely the right call. Thank you, Nick and Papa Smithy, for making those moves and keeping those guys on and not dumping them off somewhere. Masu, who I am admittedly unfamiliar with. Knox, I'm sure you'll be able to fill us in.
I'm very familiar with Masu.
Excellent. And then Winsome. Winsome, if people will recall, was on that initial Korea 9 roster that LS put together for Cloud9. He did not look, if I'm being honest, did not look good in spring. He ended up moving over to Unicorns of Love in the German Prime League.
Unicorns of Love, Sexy Edition.
And from what I could read, it does look like he performed better there. Maybe need a little bit more time in a developmental league. And so now being brought back over to NA for an academy support spot. So Knox, I'm going to give you the floor here. As our academy expert, how are you feeling about this roster? Keeping Philip Spirax Yuji, fantastic. Talk to me about Masu, and then give me your thoughts on Winsome.
So, I was talking to Cubby a little bit the other night, because he was streaming, and basically he was kind of going down through all the challengers. I'm going to try and say challengers, because that'll be the new team names for this league, I guess. So excuse me if I say academy. But I went down through, he was going down through all the challengers teams, and basically he was pointing out how every challengers team currently is doing either 1 or 2 development pieces outside of TSM, which we don't really need to get into. And then everyone else is veterans to help develop these pieces, right? And he was saying he's very, very excited for FlyQuest, and I'm completely on board with his reasoning here, because you could argue that all 5 players for FlyQuest are developmental. And I agree with this because Philip still needs more training, in my opinion. Yuji and Spirax, while awesome last year, still need more time. Masu is a brand new, fresh, from amateur AD carry, who I'll get into here in a second. And then you had Winsome, who, while looked a lot better over in the German Prime League and had a very, very good EU Masters run, continues to need development as well. And so I like this a lot because this is what I believe challengers should be used for. This is, you are developing tons and tons of players, and something that Cubby told me basically was that your goal as a challengers team is to either promote or to sell off a contract. Those are the only 2 benefits that you get from being a challengers team, which that's a whole different conversation, but basically one of those 2 things is what you need to be doing. And so when you have 5 different options to be doing one of those 2 things, that is fantastic in my opinion. It really maximizes your odds of a profit and or a promotion, which is exactly what you want to be seeing. And so this whole roster in general is exactly what I love, and I wish some other org would do the exact same thing personally. And so I know it's very risky because it's 5 developmental players, but at the same time, that's not all players like Masu who are super fresh, right? This will be the second year for Eugene Spirax. This will be like the 2.5 year for Philip. Winsome at this point in time has had a year of like LCK challengers, had a little bit of time in actual LCS, had a full year in the German Prime League as well as EU Masters. Like, these are fairly experienced tier 2 players. Like, they're developmental, but they're not like green, right? The only green one, so to speak, is Masu. And so getting into Masu, I got to listen to his comms when he was on TBA for Proving Ground qualifiers. He is very communicative. He knows exactly what he wants. He's very dictative of what he needs to do on the map. It was very funny because you guys were asking me last week, basically, who I wanted as an AD carry. And I don't think I named him in like my list of AD carries, but he's actually someone that I'm very, very okay with having. And I think he's absolutely deserving of being on this team. So I really hope people keep an eye on him coming into this year because he is actually really, really good. He may need a little time to warm up into the Tier 2 league because it is a different league. It is a step up, but he is worthy. So please give him some space if he struggles in the first week or two, but he will live up to it, I promise.
Nice.
Sorry, that was a long tangent.
No, that was absolutely excellent. That was a fantastic rundown. Let's get some thank yous in the chat for Knox because that was just excellent. Curly, how are you feeling about bringing back Philip, UG Spirax? I think just the general fan sentiment has been overwhelmingly positive. How are you feeling about it yourself?
So UG Spirax, holding on to them, like you said, something everyone on the show, like everybody liked that. And then Philip, I think, is going to be a monster in the Salt League now that he had a full split of like holding himself like what I would consider to be pretty well against some seasoned pros. Again, like I will always talk about, the only downfall is sometimes he went a bit too far forward, but he had the audacity to like try and make plays. And so like having that experience and like limit testing, I'm sure it'll translate really, really well to the NACL, especially when you have some other top laners who might like just be, or like not even just top laners, like other players that are going to be making their premieres in this level of League of Legends. So having that time in the LCS, like that split to really push himself, going to make him an absolute monster. And so I think when it comes to like proving grounds and all that stuff, like I expect with this roster on paper, like probability of like top 4 finishes, especially now that things are a bit tighter than how they were over the season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think really, really like this, and then excited to see how Winsome and Masu perform together. Because unlike Nox, I didn't get to ref Masu, so I've never actually seen him play. And then what I saw from Winston was on that interesting C9 roster. So I'm hoping that everything meshes well together, and like I said, should be a top 4 proving grounds finish. Is that what it's called now, or is like what's the tournament gonna be?
No, now it's the North American Challengers League, and it's a complicated system that does include promotion and relegation. The very brief overview for those of you who have not been tracking it: there's 16 teams in it. 10 of them are the like academy teams.
What's the tournament?
There's several. There's multiple tournaments.
Okay. Basically, like whatever the playoffs thing.
Right.
The playoffs should be always top 4. That's what I meant.
Right. There's going to be 6 basically amateur teams, one of which will be FlyFam, as we know, and those teams theoretically could get relegated out of because I think you have to be top 2 out of those 6 amateur teams in order to not have to fight for your spot in the like relegations tournament that will happen at some point. So as long as that amateur team stays up, that's great news for us. Even if they have to battle their way through relegations, that's fine too, because it will be tough to not be in that relegations tournament. Like the majority of those amateur teams will be in relegations, so there is that.
Yeah, that was like the one complaint about that format is you could have like, say FlyFam finishes 9th overall, which would be fantastic for an amateur team.
Right.
But if you have CLG Faith and Team Liquid first finishing like 8th and 7th, then it doesn't matter. 9th place FlyQuest amateur is going into relegations, while all those academy or challenger teams are still like safe, and it's like whatever for them, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You know what I can't wait for though is inevitably if FlyFam and FlyAm have to face each other.
Oh, the Civil War.
Sorry, The "I'm sorry, little one" memes.
There will be one singular best of two between Fly Fam and Fly Challengers, and I'm ready for the FlyQuest Civil War.
Oh, it's going to be
Yeah.
absolutely
Just like, Philip dunking on whatever top laner is in Fly Fam. I'm sorry, little one. I'm sure Parkamon is already working on memes that could be applicable to anyone.
right. Nox, how are you feeling about the Academy team? Because I think Curly was just talking about how he's looking for top 4 finishes throughout the year. Where are you kind of ranking this team right now? Because there are some good players on other Academy teams. So where do you personally have them ranked right now?
See, yeah, I don't know all the other rosters exactly, but like based off of like the history of this squad alone, this should be a team that should be fighting for stage time finally at the LCS studio. Which, because you know how at the end of the proving grounds tournaments, like I think it was top 4. I want to say it was top 4. You basically got to play on stage in the LCS studio. I think so. Yeah, basically, I agree with Curly. Is we should be fighting for a top 4 spot in these tournaments because let's be honest, like everyone I was saying is somewhat veteran for the Tier 2 Challengers League, right? They're not veterans in like LCS, yeah. They're veterans for the Tier 2 League outside of Masu. So I think what'll probably end up happening is Masu will take some time to adapt. And then by the time summer regular split is done, I think basically we'll hit into the playoffs, whatever format that may be in. And I think from there, the team should be ready to go and they should be fighting for a top 4 spot. So I'm willing to glance over regular season a little bit so Masu can get adapted, and then after that, I'm ready to go for the win.
Totally. No, I think that's good. This is definitely going to be an exciting year for Academy. I'm excited that, I mean, Philip was previously on Academy with Yuji and Spirex, so they've already got experience working together. So you've got 3 out of 5 Academy players basically returning. With just a new bot lane slotting in. So I'm excited to see where the existing synergies can coexist with the new ways of thinking and the new talent that's being brought in. And so, yeah, I am expecting high marks out of this roster for sure. But, I mean, what's new from Flight Check, right? We expect good things out of teams that are supposed to be good. So there is that. All right. That is all for Academy. Looking forward to seeing those guys play, and looking forward to the eventual announcement as well, obviously. All right, so now, kind of the final topic of the night. Got to talk about some of these new FlyQuest alumni that have, and kind of their trajectories and journeys. So the big ones, obviously, Johnson and Afremu. Not even reported to have teams next year so far. Not reported to be even on Academy teams. Philip moved down to Academy, Takui back over to France, and then Jose Dioto back to the LLA, where he will be joining Estral Esports. And Jose is actually where I want to start. Because I think this is a worthy discussion to have. Brought him onto the team after a very strong Worlds performance at Worlds 2020. He looked really good. Everyone was very excited about this signing. Here for 2 years, and it never felt like he rose. There would be flashes of it, but in my opinion, never felt like we really saw those same highs that we saw at Worlds 2020. There were flashes, like I said. But it felt like that was the peak at that Worlds, and we never really got that in a consistent manner for the next 2 seasons. He was never bad. I never want to say that Jose Dioto played poorly, that he was a liability. He was none of these things. I think he was a very consistent jungler. I don't know if the metas of the last 2 years really suited him, especially the Hecarim Udyr meta. I don't know if that was necessarily his thing.
Sure, certainly wasn't yours, Sandy.
Certainly wasn't mine. But I want to hear from you guys. I don't want to ask the question, was the Jose Dioto experiment a success? I don't really want to ask that question, but
I think a better way to phrase it is, was the Jose Dioto experiment worth it?
sure. And, great question. So why don't you start by answering it? Because I'm still formulating how I feel about it, and I have a lot of conflicting thoughts. So if one of you wants to take that question and run with it first, by all means, please go.
So I'm actually going to say it was worth it. And I say this because you have to consider the context in which FlyQuest built that roster, right? You had just come off of a team who had taken second place back-to-back in 2020, and then went to Worlds and took a game off of top esports in groups, and while ended up losing in some bad throws, put up respectable fights for the most part against DRX, right? If I remember, was it DRX that was in that group with us?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah, so we put up fairly respectable fights against them. And then off-season hits, COVID's been raging for almost a year now at this point, and basically all the funds get pulled away from FlyQuest. Your roster, who Nick said on our podcast like a year ago at this point, he wanted to create a dynasty out of this roster. He was ready for FlyQuest to be like a tier 1 org in the league based off of these guys. And then just poof, gone. So you come in and basically you're having to rebuild from scratch. And so lo and behold, there's this jungler from the LLA who got on the world stage and just in not a majority of the games, in a fair number of his games, gapped Peanut, one of the best LCK junglers there is, right? Mm-hmm. Like, dang, who is this guy? And so I'm sure everyone did their research, they did their analysis, and said, maybe this guy could be good. And because he's from the LLA, he's got to be relatively cheap. Makes perfect sense to me. And so we brought him on in, and clearly 2021 just did not work out. Him and Palafox didn't click. And obviously, I'm not going to get into it here, but according to Palafox stream, there were major coaching issues at the time. Okay, whatever. I said it myself, run it back again, try it one more time, because I don't think Jose Dioto got a fair shake. This year around, I think it was fair to say that we built a team around him that, outside of certain areas at times, like, Jose Dioto could have thrived, and we never really saw him hit those elite levels. So at the end of the day, I'm glad we tried the Jose Dioto experiment. I think everything about it at the time made sense. And I think we've just come to the conclusion that the experiment is no longer working in FlyQuest's favor or Jose Dioto's favor, and so it was time to part ways. And there's nothing wrong about that. And I think, if anything, his rumored team, or confirmed team rather at this point, of Estral Esports will be a major contender in the LLA. And if what I'm saying about FlyQuest being a top 2, possibly top 1 team, maybe we'll see him at MSI. We'll get the FlyQuest versus Estral matchup in groups, and I think that'll be super hype, because I think that's a really, really possible scenario that could happen. So I think it was worth. I'm not upset about bringing him up to LCS at all. I'm glad he was here.
Yeah, I would agree that I'm not upset about ever having him on the team. Or I think he was good for what we had to work with financially at the time, and circumstances change. And when you're presented with opportunities to make clear upgrades, I think you have to, take those. And it's business. Like, sorry, that this is kind of like how it is. Curly, how about you? How do you feel about the Jose experiment, as we've kind of termed it now?
I mean, honestly, I think it was. I'm gonna agree that it was worth it, because I think the big thing is, in the grand scheme of the history of FlyQuest and all that stuff, you have to look at 2021 and then just delete it from your memory. Mm-hmm. It was a weird time. It was last minute roster moves that, like, barely had to scramble to get a team within a few weeks before roster like signing deadlines were there. Meaning, it's like, all right, who's out there? What can we get together? It was a mess because things went awry. And so you kind of saw that in how the season worked out. It was players that didn't mesh together, coaching issues, and players that once they went elsewhere where the culture fit them, they were able to excel in some degree. And so I do believe if we were able to have Jose for the same time, but remove the problems of last year, we would all be talking better about this, like saying like, we're glad the time he had here and maybe he just wants to move on. Because I do think, like, I never once thought Jose was actually like bad. Like, I think there were some moments where it was like oopses, but like overall, great personality for the brand, exciting to watch, had some really awesome plays, and like I think it was worth it. And then especially I like that we committed to giving him the second year instead of just being like, all right, you didn't do perfectly last year, we're just gonna drop you. It's like we gave him the second shot and we made a really good jungle mid duo with throwing Takui in. And so I think, like, I do think it was worth it. We did the best with what we could and we truly gave him a shot. And so I am excited for the hypothetical moment where we get to face him on Astral Esports, if they are the LLA representatives, and we get to face him in any group stage or whatever, and see, it's like, all right, are you gonna, like, who's gonna win here? Are you gonna beat your old team, or are we gonna be like, are we gonna beat you? But it was worth it for me. Also, he complimented my hair, so like, I consider that a big dub.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was a good experiment. It was worthwhile. It certainly brought a lot of exposure to the team from the LLA community. I'm sad to say I feel like a lot of that fandom will probably depart from FlyQuest with Jose Dioto gone. So I think that just, it forces the team to work around that. And look, now they've got 5 new players that they can develop as personalities. Spica, one of the better personalities in the LCS for sure. Ayla, a promising young rookie that they can really bring up. And Impact, a well-known veteran who people just generally like. I don't really think anyone has anything against Impact. So these are good players with good personalities and plenty of opportunity to grow the fan base from that. And also, you know what? Winning helps. Winning helps you grow a fan base. Like, no one likes saying it, but that is just simply the case.
Oh, yeah.
Winning helps you build a fan base. So, it's simple. Just win. So there's that. Okay, couple other things. I'm just going to keep rolling with this the blank experiment for this next one. The Afro experiment. We need to talk about this.
I don't know if you'd call that an experiment at this point. He's been around a while.
The Afro moment. We'll call about the Afro moment.
The Afro movement. Anyway.
The Afro movement. Oh, hang on. I'm changing the title. The Afro movement. That actually works great. Afromu purportedly signed on to be a veteran leadership figure for an extended period of time, ends up being just a year, and no one really knows what he's doing next. I believe he's 30 years old now, if I'm not mistaken. Which, that doesn't mean that he's done. Doublelift is basically, I believe Doublelift is actually 30 years old.
Fact checking, but continue.
Yeah. So he clearly last year still had the mechanical skill to play. I think it's just like, honestly, it's just some level of mild ageism against players that are older than 25 that, they don't have lightning fast reflexes anymore. I mean, in the support role, that's not really what you're looking for. You're looking for that leadership, communications, and veteran presence. But 1 year goes by, and we are moving on from Afremu for promising young LCS North American talent. Um, is this a move that, looking back now, makes sense to you guys to bring on Afremu? Does it still make sense? Should we have gone with younger talent from the get-go? Especially considering that the team was not likely going to be contending for Worlds, although maybe people thought it at one point. So where are you guys kind of on this Afremu signing post expiration, I guess? Knox, how about you?
So again, more context, but I guess if you don't put too much thought into it, it's a bit weird, right? You bring this super veteran player on who's been consistently good throughout the years, who is meant to be like the voice of like leadership in your team along with your coaches, right? Like that is the whole point of bringing this man in. Everyone from the FlyQuest fandom last year had him on our Christmas wish list. He was number 1 on my Christmas wish list. We all got him, and we were all thrilled about it. And so to suddenly have him not on the team anymore, and let alone not even playing in the LCS, is kind of like, what happened, right? Now, look at it from the perspective of FlyQuest upper management. You come into the 2022 season looking to build off of a pretty abysmal 2021, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's rebuilding year part 2 because rebuilding year part 1 did not go well. And so you bring in Afro, you sign him to a 2-year contract and say, hey, we're basically going to utilize you to kind of get this roster up and running, and we kind of go from there, right? And I think for the most part, that's kind of what this year was. Like the team, even though placements were not great, the team as a whole, in terms of quality of play, looked a lot better than 2021. I think bringing him in did exactly what FlyQuest intended to do. But things happened. Trisha leaves halfway through the year. Michael gets promoted to CEO. The Milwaukee Bucks are no longer sponsoring FlyQuest, and we now have an NHL hockey team sponsoring us, providing us a ton of money. Plans kind of change, right? And so at this point, you go from okay, we're going to build off of this development year to, oh no, we can just start going to win the league. And so, hey man, at the end of the day, I think if you have players available who you think in the long run are going to be more valuable than Afro, and I do think Ayla could be more valuable than Afro in the long run, you may as well go for it now. Yeah. So I'm not going to blame Fly for suddenly saying, hey, we're kind of done with Afro. Especially when you're bringing on talent like Ayla, who's super young and has been, for the most part, I know he played a little bit in Osh, NA developed talent. So I can't really be upset by what they did with Afro. I hope wherever he ends up going, whatever he ends up doing, like, I hope we treat him well and whatever it is. But I think at the end of the day, it makes sense for letting Afro go and bringing Ayla on from FlyQuest perspective of like the past year.
Yeah, totally. Curly, how about you? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to keep mine a lot shorter and sweeter. Like, I do think bringing on Afremu, great move at the time, an awesome open contract, really rounds out the roster well and addresses, a problem that we were having towards the end of last year of like, all right, who's the voice of reason, who's like guiding us, who's making shot calls. And he's, you have this veteran leader being like, all right, I'll be the papa of the group and all that stuff. I'll be the cool guy. And then also, I think brings a great personality to the team as well, because that's one of my favorite things about FlyQuest this year is like every player like is someone that could spot an interview that you could have, or like that's good in the content. It's like they have personality. They're not just these dry drones who get awkward when they're behind a mic and all that stuff. So like really good from a fan perspective. And like, yeah, it's a bit awkward that we only have him a year, but with this commitment to the overhaul, I don't think it's without, a lot of thought. I think it's because there's ambition. I'm sure like also like it seems like every move of like players like leaving the roster is very respectful and like I don't think there's any bad blood. So, and then we don't know for sure if Afro is leaving FlyQuest altogether, because I don't think his contract's officially been moved anywhere. So wherever he ends up, maybe he just becomes a FlyQuest content creator, because we already know he streams a good amount when he's not playing LCS. Maybe he just does that, or maybe he becomes a coach. Like, I think whatever happens with his contract, it's gonna be whatever he really wants to do. And maybe he's decided, you know what, I've had enough LCS. I've been here since the beginning. I don't need to be here anymore. That could be another part of it. So it is a bit weird that it's only a year, but also contracts come and go, you know?
Yeah, totally. Okay, there's a couple more players that we'll hit on really, really fast. Obviously, we have to talk about the Takui departure. I think this is probably simpler than people think it is. You know, clearly, like, wanted to go back and play in France.
Mm-hmm.
This makes sense. He got some great exposure here in LCS. He showed that he could really compete. And here's something that I want to say, because Nox, I just saw you talking about this in chat, that you didn't really understand how much Fly was going to be spending, and you knew it was going to be more, but you didn't think it was going to be like all caps more. I think what people are overlooking sometimes with like, oh wow, FlyQuest spent so much. Salaries dropped. Everyone is reporting this, that salaries are like cratering across the league, and you almost now have like this parity where FlyQuest can actually afford the better players because they don't cost nearly as much as they might have in years prior. So I think it is simultaneously, okay, the budget is bigger, but the costs of players are also down. So I think it's both. So Takui back to France. This makes sense. And then finally, oh, I've got a good pun for this one. The John Sunset. There we go. Thank you. The Johnson set.
You will make a good dad one day, Sandy.
You know, what can I say? All right, Johnson. We have to talk about it, and then that's the final thing. I don't really know where to begin. I think a lot of people over time pointed at Johnson as like a weak link or this or that, yada, yada, yada. Nox, I want to hear from you. You know, Johnson moving on. Doesn't look like he's got a spot in LCS or Academy next year so far. I mean, how are you feeling about the services he provided for the last couple years? Was our time better spent with like Tomo, things like that? How are you feeling about it?
2021 was what it was, right? You paired with Diamond/Dreams, and that whole thing was a mess. I'm not gonna look into that too much. This year with Afro though, I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think there was a brief point in summer where him and Afro peaked as a top 2 bot lane in the LCS. They were legitimately good.
Yeah.
So for me, I think Johnson was never a disappointment or a weak link on the team. I think people just wanted him to be more. And with the playstyle that FlyQuest had, that's understandable. I mean, you really should have put more emphasis on the AD carry to carry. And I don't think Johnson was ever costing games, but there weren't as many games where he was carrying them, you know? So I can understand a lot of people pointing towards him, but I wouldn't describe him as a weak link. So with his departure, there's been no announcements. It's just been pure radio silence.
Yeah.
Something about that tells me there's something personal behind the scenes going on there, which means I don't really want to speculate into it too much. So I'm just going to respect the privacy and say whatever he's doing or wherever he is, I hope he's okay. I hope everything's good, and hopefully we see him again in the future.
Yeah, there you go. Curly, any thoughts there before we move towards closing?
Another case where I think it's actually fairly simple. The contract was supposed to be up at the end of this season anyway. and I think that might be a small part of why it was quietly removed around October. It's because it was like we already knew it was going to end. I don't think there was any push on either side to renew it, especially because like 21, personally, I was unsatisfied with Johnson. 22, I was very satisfied with Johnson. Like huge turnaround, him on the team. His performance was one of the most consistent things throughout the year. And so I really think it was 22. It's show up, lane with the homie once again, get a pentakill, refuse to elaborate, leave. And honestly, that's fine. You know, I think if that's like I would agree there's probably some personal motives there. If you haven't seen any looking for team thing, because players that do want to like seek other teams usually put that out there. And so I think maybe he's also in a case of maybe he's had enough for now, maybe he needs to take a break, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want to respect that privacy as well, and I hope whatever path he chooses in the future is good for him.
Totally. All right, great thoughts all around. So sayonara to these lovely, lovely folks, and hopefully we'll see them on the Rift sooner rather than later. All right, that is basically all we've got FlyQuest related. No amateur news this week. No announcements whatsoever by FlyQuest. I expect something this week, if not right after we end the show, or tomorrow. But I do expect something this week. Hopefully, at least one announcement, maybe a few more. We'll see what happens. But that is all we've got. That's all I've got. Do you guys have any final topics that you want to hit on before we close out?
I don't think there's any Smash stuff either. So, like,
Nope.
honestly, it's just a bit of a slow week.
Well,
Just
it was
waiting
the
for
holiday,
the-
so
Yeah.
there's that.
Just waiting for those announcement drops so that we can start get the ball
Totally.
rolling, you know?
Totally. Knox, how about you?
Yeah,
Any final topics?
No, I did hear whispers that the amateur teams are kind of in a kerfuffle right now. I'm not sure exactly the reason why, but there's a lot of amateur GMs who are kind of running around right now trying to get contacts and points of contacts going and like talking with players. I'm not exactly sure what exactly it is or what's exactly going on. I just know amateur scene in general is kind of in a state of chaos. So that's kind of interesting. So
I mean,
kind of trying to keep an eye on it, but I don't really have much detail.
when is the amateur scene not in a state of chaos? Let's be
Okay,
honest.
also true. Also
I mean-
completely true.
Let's be honest here. The amateur scene is never really at a stable point on any timeline. So
I think like a character trait of the amateur scene is being in chaos.
yes,
You know?
I firmly agree with this. All right, quickly before I close out the show, I do want to thank I'm Scary Terry, who dropped that Prime sub earlier tonight. Thank you very much for the support. Scary Terry, known
Thank you, Terry.
FlyQuest Discord mod and friend of the show, been a longtime supporter of FlyQuest, and also has been on the Flight Check ride for a long time as well. So thank you very much to our friend Scary Terry. Hey, if anyone else has one of those Prime subs, now is your time. I'm just letting you know before we wind out the night. But that is all we've got. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of Flight Check. Off-season continues to roll on. Expect announcements. Unfortunately, no live league. We would love to work on getting any kind of special guests or anything on. So TBD on that. Of course, we'll let you know before anything happens. But to keep up with us, you can catch the show at Flight Check Crew, myself at SantosDB, Knox at Knoxwar with 2 R's, and Curly at Curly_QQ_. Make sure to hop into the Flight Check Discord as well, where all kinds of esports discussion and otherwise takes place. If you missed any part of this episode, the VOD will be up on Twitch here and YouTube tonight or tomorrow morning. If you're watching that and would like to catch the show live, we do broadcast the episode usually every Monday night, usually at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at twitch.tv/FlightCheckCrew. Curly, any final shout-outs or plugs before we wrap up the night?
I'm gonna shout out Game Freak for making one of the most entertaining games I've played. Earlier, when I was playing Pokemon before the show, I got in a battle where my Pokemon continuously slid down the cliff every time I put them out, and then had to make their moves go all the way up through the terrain. And honestly, it was absolutely hilarious. So, thank you, Game Freak. That was really wonderful. Also, without spoiling anything, Team Star has the that is the best mission line in the whole game. I will not be taking any questions or comments. That is all.
There you go. Nox, any shout-outs or plugs before we close out?
I'm going to shout out the NA Men Discord and podcast.
Yes, love those guys.
Yeah, Curly kind of got me in, as well as Andrea, and I kind of dragged you in as well, Sandy. And I don't know, it's been kind of a fun community to just kind of read and see everyone chatting, and it's just an overall very positive community. So for other FlyQuest fans who I know are trying to be very wholesome, because that's kind of what our community is, right? I would absolutely recommend you go check out those guys. They've been very, very kind and awesome to interact with. So go check them out. NA Men, cool guys, cool people.
Very good people.
Check out if you get in the Discord, check out Simping Channel. There will be some really good like LCS photos of players.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
For myself, I was going to shout out NA Men, so now I've got to quickly come up with something else. Shout out to the NFL for consistently scheduling the worst possible matchups in prime time. Colts Steelers going on right now on Monday Night Football. Awful game. Apparently, the Colts have no offensive yards through the first quarter.
Yikes.
Two trash teams on Monday night. So we're glad you spent your evening here with us on Flight Check instead of them. Oh, here's the other shout out. Portugal with the 2-0 victory. Let's be honest, it should have only been 1-0. That penalty call was kind of nonsense. But they are through to the round of 16. So Portugal moving on up. USA tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Win and you're in, baby. The biggest matchup the USA has had since the last time they were in the World Cup, which was 8 years ago, in my opinion. So be sure to tune into that. Go to some sports bar or anything. Hang out with your fellow Americans if you are an American. And watch some good old-fashioned European football. All right. We will be back next week to discuss the continuing offseason and hopefully some announcements we can finally discuss. So for now, stay safe out there. Please don't forget to hit the head on the nail, and we'll see you all very, very soon. Adios, everybody.
Peace, y'all.